After an unforgettable night of passion, they were unaware that they had already been engaged. Hi, my beautiful, loyal, and golden-hearted family. Welcome back to Mr. Peter Stories. Before we dive into today's story, let's take a moment for a special prayer. May love, happiness, and endless blessings fill your heart and life. May you always be surrounded by those who cherish you deeply. Now, tell me honestly, do you enjoy our little game before the story, or do you find it boring? Be open with me, because everything I do is for you, my family. Today's game is daring, but also deeply romantic. If you have the courage, tell me, at what age did you first fall in love? Was it a love that blossomed into something beautiful, or was it just a sweet dream that slipped away? I'll be waiting for your answers in the comments, because your love stories mean the world to me. And if my last two stories touched your heart, right, we are satisfied. So I know I'm giving you the love-filled stories you deserve. Now, my beautiful family, let's begin with love, passion, and a story that will touch your soul. The Miami sunset painted the sky in brilliant hues of orange and pink as Jericho Basilio stepped out of his Tesla Cybertruck onto the pristine sands of South Beach. At 38, he had built his tech empire from scratch, transforming a small startup in his garage into Basilio Innovations, now valued at billions. Tonight, however, was about forgetting business entirely. The annual Miami Tech Summit after-party beckoned from the exclusive Ocean Drive Club, and for once he had allowed his assistant Marina to convince him to attend. The salt-laden breeze carried the distant rhythm of music, mixing with the gentle lapping of waves against the shore. Jericho loosened his Italian silk tie, a gesture that seemed to shed the weight of countless board meetings and investment presentations. His fingers brushed against the smooth surface of his phone. 14 missed calls from potential investors, all ignored. Tonight was different. Tonight, something in the air whispered of destiny. The Ocean Drive Club stood like a jewel against the darkening sky, its Art Deco facade illuminated by sophisticated lighting that pulsed subtly with the music within. Jericho handed his keys to the valet, straightened his custom-tailored Tom Ford jacket, and ascended the marble steps. The doorman recognized him immediately, sweeping open the gold-trimmed glass doors with a respectful nod. Inside, the club was a masterpiece of modern luxury, merged with Miami's signature style. Crystal chandeliers cast rainbow prisms across the crowd of tech elite and social influencers. The rhythmic beats of Afro-Caribbean fusion filled the air, courtesy of a DJ who had flown in specifically for this event. The scent of expensive perfumes mingled with top-shelf liquor and the subtle fragrance of tropical flowers arranged strategically throughout the space. That's when he saw her. Abena Hadley moved through the crowd with an otherworldly grace that made time itself seem to slow. Her emerald dress, a masterpiece of silk and subtle shimmer, caught the light with each step. Her natural beauty needed no enhancement, though the subtle gleam of diamond earrings drew attention to the elegant curve of her neck. She was speaking animatedly with a small group of admirers, her hands gesturing with the passion that had made her latest TED Talk on neural interfaces go viral. Jericho had seen her research, of course. Everyone in the tech world knew of Dr. Abena Hadley's revolutionary work in AI neural interface technology. Her latest breakthrough had made headlines just last week, a neural implant that could potentially restore sight to the blind. But nothing in her videos or press photos had captured the magnetic presence she possessed in person. As if sensing his gaze, Abena turned. Their eyes met across the crowded room, and the world around them seemed to fade into a blur of light and shadow. The connection was instant, electric, undeniable. A smile played at the corners of her lips, both mysterious and inviting. Jericho found himself moving through the crowd, drawn to her by some force beyond his understanding. The people between them seemed to part naturally, creating a path that felt predestined. As he approached, he could detect the subtle fragrance of her perfume, jasmine and something exotic he couldn't quite place. "Dr. Hadley," he said, his voice carrying a warmth that surprised even him. "Your presentation on synaptic mapping at the summit today was brilliant." She turned fully to face him, and up close, her beauty was even more striking. Her eyes held intelligence and humor in equal measure. "Mr. Basilio," she replied, her voice carrying hints of both her Ghanaian heritage and British education. "I was hoping you'd be here tonight. Your question about quantum processing applications was intriguing." The small group around them dispersed discreetly, sensing the crackling energy between the two. Jericho signaled a passing waiter. "Would you join me for a drink? I have some thoughts about integrating your neural interface with our quantum AI architecture." "Business discussion at a party?" Abena raised an eyebrow, accepting the champagne flute he offered. "How very CEO of you." "Then let's not talk business," Jericho countered, surprising himself with his boldness. "Tell me instead why someone who could be changing the world in any lab globally chose Miami." Her laugh was musical, genuine. "Have you seen the sunsets here? Science needs beauty to thrive." She took a sip of champagne, her eyes never leaving his. "Though I'm beginning to think Miami has more beautiful offerings than just its sunsets." The conversation flowed as naturally as the champagne. They discovered shared passions beyond technology, a love of classical jazz, scuba diving, and surprisingly ancient mythology. Time seemed to lose all meaning as they found a quiet corner of the club's balcony, the Miami skyline glittering before them like scattered stars. "It's strange," Abena mused, leaning against the railing. The sea breeze played with her hair, carrying the salt-tinged air around them. "I've attended countless events like this, but tonight feels different," Jericho finished, moving closer. The space between them crackled with unspoken possibility. The music from inside changed to a slower rhythm, the bass deep and sensual. Without words, Jericho extended his hand. Abena took it, allowing him to draw her into a dance that was more swaying than formal steps. Her body fit perfectly against his, as if they had danced together in countless past lives. The night air wrapped around them like silk, warm and intimate. Abena's head rested against his chest, and Jericho could feel her heartbeat matching rhythm with his own. Her skin was warm beneath his fingers, where they rested at the small of her back. The scent of her perfume mixed with her natural essence was intoxicating. "We should probably join the others inside," Abena whispered, making no move to pull away. "Probably," Jericho agreed, his fingers tracing small circles on her back through the silk of her dress. The touch was innocent, yet charged with electricity. She lifted her head to look at him, and in her eyes he saw the same desire that burned through his veins. The Miami moon cast silver light across her features, making her appear almost ethereal. Time seemed to stand still as he lowered his head, giving her every chance to pull away. Their first kiss was gentle, questioning. The second was anything but. Abena's fingers threaded through his hair as she pulled him closer, her body pressing against his with an urgency that matched his own. The world disappeared until there was nothing but the taste of her lips, the feel of her body, and the sound of their racing hearts. When they finally parted, both slightly breathless, the world had changed. Nothing would ever be the same after this moment, and they both knew it. "My penthouse is nearby," Jericho said softly, his thumb tracing her cheekbone. "We could continue our discussion about neural interfaces, or not discuss anything at all." Abena's smile held promise and mystery in equal measure. "I'd like that, both the discussion and the not discussing." The ride to his penthouse in his Cybertruck was charged with anticipation. They spoke little, but their hands remained linked across the center console, thumbs stroking in small, maddening circles. The night air through the open windows carried the scent of the ocean and possibility. His penthouse occupied the top 2 floors of one of Miami's most exclusive buildings. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered panoramic views of the city and ocean, but neither of them spared a glance for the spectacular nighttime vista. They were lost in each other, in the magnetic pull that had drawn them together from the moment their eyes first met. In the private elevator, Abena pressed herself against him, her lips finding his neck. Jericho's control wavered as he felt her heartbeat racing against his chest. The soft sigh she released when his fingers traced her spine was the most erotic sound he'd ever heard. The penthouse doors opened directly into a space that seamlessly merged luxury with cutting-edge technology. Smart glass windows tinted automatically for privacy, and subtle lighting created an intimate atmosphere without any command needed. Abena moved to the center of the room, her eyes taking in the space before returning to lock with his. With deliberate slowness, she reached for the zipper of her dress. The silk whispered as it fell, pooling at her feet like liquid emerald. In the soft lighting, her skin glowed like polished bronze. She was a goddess made flesh, more beautiful than any fantasy. Jericho's breath caught in his throat. His heart thundered so loudly he was sure she must hear it. Every cell in his body urged him to rush forward, to claim her, but he forced himself to move slowly. This moment deserved to be savored. He approached her with the reverence of a worshipper approaching a sacred altar. His fingers trembled slightly as they traced the curve of her shoulder down her arm, memorizing the feel of her skin. Abena's eyes fluttered closed at his touch, her lips parting on a soft sigh that sent fire through his veins. "You're beautiful," he whispered, the words inadequate for what he felt. She was more than beautiful. She was magnificent, ethereal, perfect. Their next kiss was deeper, hungrier. Hands explored with increasing urgency as remaining barriers fell away. Every touch, every kiss, every shared breath felt like destiny fulfilling itself. They moved together as if they had done this dance 1,000 times before, yet each moment was fresh and new and electric with discovery. Later, much later, they lay tangled in Egyptian cotton sheets, the Miami moonlight painting silver patterns across their skin. Abena's head rested on his chest, her fingers tracing lazy patterns through the light dusting of hair there. The city glittered beyond the windows, but it felt like they were in their own private universe. "Stay," Jericho murmured into her hair, not caring if he sounded too eager, too invested, too soon. Nothing about this night had followed conventional rules or timing. Abena propped herself up on an elbow, studying his face with those intelligent, beautiful eyes. "Are you sure that's wise? We barely know each other." "I know enough," he replied, tucking a stray curl behind her ear. "I know you're brilliant, passionate, and somehow manage to be both elegant and adorably clumsy when you're excited about neural pathways. I know you take your coffee with honey instead of sugar, and you have a scar on your knee from trying to rescue a stray cat when you were 12. I know that when you laugh, really laugh, your nose crinkles in the most enchanting way." She smiled. That nose crinkle he'd mentioned making an appearance. "You're very observant, Mr. Basilio. Only about things that matter," he said, pulling her close for another kiss. "Stay. Let's watch the sunrise together." Abena's response was to settle more comfortably against him, her body fitting perfectly against his side. Soon, her breathing deepened into the rhythm of sleep, but Jericho remained awake, watching the play of moonlight across her skin and marveling at how one night could change everything. What neither of them knew, as they drifted in their cocoon of newfound passion, was that their families were already celebrating the success of their careful orchestration. In separate parts of Miami, The Basilios and Hadleys raised glasses to their children's chance meeting, congratulating themselves on their matchmaking skills. But fate has a way of making its own plans, regardless of human schemes. The love blooming between Jericho and Abina was far more powerful than any arranged match could have predicted. As the Miami night wrapped around them like a blanket of stars, destiny smiled at the perfect union of hearts that had found each other despite, not because of, their families' planning. The first rays of dawn were just beginning to paint the horizon when Jericho finally allowed himself to drift off to sleep, Abina's warmth against him feeling like coming home. Whatever tomorrow might bring, this night had changed everything. And somewhere in the universe, the stars aligned just a little more perfectly, knowing that two souls, meant to find each other, had finally connected. Chapter 2. The Mix-Up. The morning sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Jericho's penthouse, casting golden light across the rumpled sheets. Abina stirred first, her eyes fluttering open to take in the spectacular view of Miami's coastline. Last night felt like a dream, but the warmth of Jericho's body next to hers was deliciously real. She propped herself up on one elbow, taking the opportunity to study him in the morning light. Sleep softened his features, making him look younger than his 38 years. His dark hair was charmingly mussed, and the sheet had slipped down to his waist, revealing the toned physique that came from his dedication to pre-dawn workouts. Abina's fingers itched to trace the line of his jaw, to feel the morning stubble beneath her touch. As if sensing her thoughts, Jericho's eyes opened, immediately finding hers. The smile that spread across his face made her heart skip. "Good morning," he murmured, voice husky with sleep. His hand found hers, bringing it to his lips for a soft kiss that sent shivers down her spine. "Please tell me last night wasn't just an incredibly vivid dream." "If it was a dream, we're both having it," Abina replied, leaning down to press her lips to his. What started as a gentle good-morning kiss quickly deepened, reigniting the passion from the night before. Jericho rolled them over, pinning her beneath him as his lips traced a path down her neck. Abina's breath caught as his teeth grazed her pulse point. Her fingers tangled in his hair, encouraging his exploration. The sharp trill of a phone shattered their passionate bubble. Then another phone joined in, creating a cacophony of ringtones. "Ignore it," Jericho murmured against her skin, but Abina had already recognized her mother's custom ringtone. "I can't," she sighed, reluctantly pushing at his shoulders. "That's my mother's emergency ring. She only uses it when something's truly wrong." Jericho groaned, but rolled away, reaching for his own buzzing phone. His expression shifted from annoyance to concern as he saw the screen. "My father's calling too, at 7 a.m. on a Saturday." They shared a look of mutual disappointment and worry before answering their respective calls. The peaceful morning dissolved into a whirlwind of raised voices and urgent demands. "Mother, slow down," Abina said, clutching the sheet to her chest as she sat up. "What do you mean, where am I?" "I'm out." "Yes, I know about the breakfast meeting, but what contract?" Across the room, Jericho was having a similar conversation. "Dad, it's Saturday. What board meeting? I wasn't informed of any—" "Wait, what engagement announcement?" Their eyes met across the room, both conversations painting a picture neither had expected. Abina's mother was frantically explaining about a crucial contract signing and engagement announcement breakfast that apparently couldn't proceed without her presence. Jericho's father was simultaneously berating him for missing a board meeting where his engagement was meant to be officially announced. "I'll be there in an hour," they both said, almost simultaneously to their respective parents, ending the calls and staring at each other in bewilderment. "Did your parents also happen to mention—" Jericho started. "An engagement I knew nothing about?" "Yes." Abina's mind was racing. "This has to be some kind of mistake." Jericho ran a hand through his hair. making it stand up in ways that would have been adorable if the situation weren't so bizarre. My father mentioned a merger agreement with... Please tell me your mother's company isn't Hadley Neurosciences. Abina felt the blood drain from her face. And your father's company isn't Basilio Innovations. They stared at each other as the reality of the situation sank in. Their passionate night together, their instant connection, their undeniable chemistry, all of it had happened while their families were preparing to announce their arranged engagement. The absurdity of it hit them both at the same time. Laughter bubbled up, starting as nervous chuckles and building into full-blown hysterics. Abena fell back against the pillows, tears streaming down her face as she laughed. "We're engaged," she gasped between fits of giggles. "We spent last night having the most passionate encounter of my life with my apparently pre-arranged fiancé." Jericho crawled across the bed to her, his own laughter mixing with hers. "I can't decide if this is the most romantic coincidence ever or the most ridiculous family manipulation in history." Abina's laughter softened as he drew closer. The sheet had slipped down, and the sight of his bare chest brought back vivid memories of the previous night. Her body responded immediately, desire pooling low in her belly. "Maybe both," she whispered as he hovered over her. His eyes darkened as they traced the curve of her shoulder where the sheet had slipped. "We should get ready," he murmured, even as his fingers traced patterns on her exposed skin. "Our families are waiting. They've clearly been planning this for a while," Abina replied, arching into his touch. "They can wait a little longer." His control snapped at her words. The kiss he gave her was fierce, claiming, full of the passion that had drawn them together the night before. Abena responded with equal fervor, her hands exploring the familiar territory of his body with renewed enthusiasm. The sheet between them was an unwelcome barrier, quickly discarded as their bodies came together in a dance they had perfected over the night. Every touch felt electric, every kiss a promise. Abina's heart thundered in her chest as Jericho's lips traced a burning path down her body. Later, much later than their parents would have preferred, they finally began preparing to face their families. Abena borrowed one of Jericho's shirts, the expensive fabric swimming on her frame, in a way that made him want to cancel all their obligations and spend the day discovering new ways to make her gasp his name. "Stop looking at me like that," she warned, trying to tame her curls into something presentable. "We're already scandalously late." Jericho stepped behind her, his arms encircling her waist as he met her eyes in the bathroom mirror. "We're engaged, apparently. I think we're allowed some scandal." The word engaged should have felt heavy, frightening. Instead, it sent a thrill through Abena's body. She turned in his arms, studying his face. "Are we really going to go along with this?" "Their plan," Jericho's fingers traced her cheek. "But marrying you." He pressed a soft kiss to her lips. "That feels like the most natural thing in the world." Abena's heart swelled. How was it possible to feel this much for someone she'd known less than 24 hours? Yet everything about being with Jericho felt right, predestined. "We should make them sweat a little," she suggested, a mischievous glint in her eye. "Let them think their plan failed spectacularly before revealing we actually fell in love on our own." Jericho's laugh was deep and rich. "I knew there was a reason I loved you." The words slipped out naturally, but neither of them flinched from them. Instead, Abena raised up on her toes, kissing him softly. "I love you too. Is that crazy after one night?" The craziest thing about this whole situation is our families thinking they needed to arrange something that was clearly written in the stars. They finally managed to make themselves presentable, though Abena's borrowed shirt and last night's dress made their activities obvious. Jericho's driver brought around the Cybertruck, and they settled in for the ride to the Hadley estate, where both families were waiting. "Ready to scandalize our parents?" Jericho asked, taking her hand. Abena squeezed his fingers, remembering how those same hands had mapped every inch of her body just hours before. With you, I'm ready for anything. The Hadley estate stood proud against the Miami skyline, its Mediterranean architecture a testament to old money and refined taste. As they pulled up to the gates, Abena took a deep breath. Remember the plan, act completely shocked about the engagement. Should we pretend to be angry? Jericho's thumb stroked circles on her palm. Devastated, Abena confirmed with a wicked smile. Until we reveal that we've actually fallen madly in love without their meddling. The gates opened, revealing a driveway lined with luxury vehicles. Clearly, both families and their business associates were already gathered for what they expected to be a smooth announcement of an arranged union. Just before they reached the front door, Jericho pulled Abena close for one more passionate kiss. Her body melted against his, responding with an eagerness that made him groan. When they parted, her lips were swollen, and his eyes were dark with desire. "For luck," he murmured. "I don't think we need luck," Abena replied, straightening his slightly askew tie. "We have something much better." "What's that? A love story even our manipulative families couldn't have scripted." Hand in hand, they walked into the mansion, ready to face whatever came next. Their families had planned a business merger sealed with an arranged marriage. Instead, they had inadvertently created the perfect conditions for a love story that would become legend in Miami's high society. The chaos that would ensue when they revealed their night together would be worth it just to see their families' faces. And later, when the dust settled, they would have a story to tell their children about how their parents fell in love the night before their arranged engagement, proving that even the best-laid plans are nothing compared to the power of destiny. As they entered the breakfast room facing the startled looks of their assembled families, Abena felt Jericho squeeze her hand. Whatever happened next, they would face it together. Their love story had begun with a chance meeting and an unforgettable night of passion, but it would continue on their own terms. The Miami sun streamed through the windows, casting a golden glow over the scene. In that light, Abena could see their future stretching out before them, a future filled with passion, adventure, and a love that had defied even their family's careful planning. The stage was set for the next chapter of their story. And if their night together was any indication, it would be a tale worth telling for generations to come. Their eyes met one last time before they fully entered the room, a silent promise passing between them. Whatever their families had planned, they had found something far more precious, a love that had bloomed in the Miami night, as natural and unstoppable as the tides that shaped the city's shores. Now it was time to show their families that the greatest love stories can't be arranged. They have to be written by the heart. Chapter 3. Midnight Confessions. The moonlit waters of Biscayne Bay sparkled like scattered diamonds as Jericho guided his yacht away from the private marina. After the chaos of the morning's revelations and their families' mixed reactions of shock, anger, and eventual reluctant acceptance, they had escaped for their official first date. Though both agreed that their passionate night together had rather reversed the traditional order of things. Abena stood at the bow, the sea breeze playing with her midnight blue dress. She had changed after the confrontation with their families, and the sight of her in the flowing silk made Jericho's breath catch. The fabric rippled around her curves like water, making her appear almost mythical in the moonlight. "You're staring," she called over her shoulder, a smile in her voice. "Can you blame me?" Jericho adjusted their course slightly, ensuring they would reach his favorite secluded cove. "You look like something from a dream." She turned to face him, and the sight nearly made him forget about navigating. The moonlight silvered her skin, making her appear to glow from within. Her eyes held a mixture of mischief and desire that made his blood run hot. A good dream, I hope, she teased, making her way toward him with the natural grace that had first caught his attention at the club. Each step was deliberate, sensual, her hips swaying with the gentle rock of the boat. The best kind, he managed, his voice rougher than intended. When she reached him, she pressed against his back, her arms sliding around his waist. The feel of her body against his made it difficult to focus on steering. "My mother thinks we're crazy," she murmured, her lips brushing his ear. "She said no one falls in love this quickly. What do you think?" He caught one of her hands, bringing it to his lips. "I think—" She pressed a kiss to his neck, making him shiver. "I think some souls recognize each other instantly, like they've known each other across lifetimes." Jericho engaged the autopilot and turned to face her, gathering her close. "Is that what happened with us? Soul recognition?" Abena's fingers traced the line of his jaw, her touch feather-light, but leaving fire in its wake. "How else do you explain this? This feeling that I've known you forever, even though it's been less than 48 hours. Instead of answering with words, Jericho captured her lips in a kiss that expressed everything he felt. The connection between them was electric, undeniable. Each touch felt both familiar and thrillingly new. Abena melted against him, her body fitting perfectly against his, as if they had been designed as two halves of a whole. The kiss deepened, becoming more urgent. Abena's hands slid under his shirt, exploring the warm skin beneath. Jericho groaned as her nails scraped lightly across his abs. His own hands roamed her back, finding the zipper of her dress. "Wait," she whispered against his lips, though her body pressed closer rather than pulling away. "We should talk first. Really talk." It took every ounce of willpower Jericho possessed to step back, though he kept her within the circle of his arms. "You're right. We've done everything backwards so far." Abena laughed, the sound mixing with the gentle lapping of waves against the hull. "I don't regret a moment of it." "Neither do I." He kissed her forehead, then led her to the cushioned seating area at the stern. The yacht continued its smooth journey toward the cove while they settled into the comfortable seating, Abena curled against his side. "Tell me everything," she said, her head resting on his shoulder. "Not the stuff I could read in Forbes or TechCrunch. Tell me about the real Jericho Basilio." He was quiet for a moment, his fingers playing with a loose curl that had escaped her elegant updo. "I grew up in a middle-class neighborhood in Miami. My father worked his way up from nothing, building Basilio Innovations from a small computer repair shop into what it is today. I spent my childhood taking apart computers and dreaming of creating something revolutionary." "And you did," Abena murmured, her hand resting over his heart. "Your AI innovations have changed the world. Not like your work has." He caught her hand, bringing it to his lips. "What you're doing with neural interfaces, that's giving people back their lives, restoring sight, movement, hope. My work just makes existing technology smarter." Abena pushed herself up to look at him. "Your false modesty is adorable, but unnecessary. Your quantum AI architecture is revolutionary, combined with my neural interface technology." Her eyes lit up with excitement. "The possibilities are endless." "Is that what drew you to me?" he teased. "My quantum processing capabilities." She pretended to consider it. "Well, that and your absolutely sinful way of kissing." To demonstrate her point, she leaned in and captured his lips in a kiss that started soft but quickly blazed into something more heated. When they finally parted, both breathing heavily, Jericho's control was hanging by a thread. The sight of Abena in the moonlight, her lips swollen from his kisses, her eyes dark with desire, tested every ounce of his resolve to have this conversation first. "Your turn," he managed, his voice rough. Tell me about the real Abena Hadley. She settled back against him, though her hand continued to trace patterns on his chest that made it hard to concentrate. I was born in Ghana, but we moved to London when I was 5. My mother was determined that I would have every educational opportunity possible. I was the odd child who preferred neuroscience journals to fairy tales. I find that incredibly sexy, Jericho murmured, pressing a kiss to her temple. Abena laughed. You would. I was always fascinated by how the brain works, how it creates our reality. When my grandmother had a stroke, I watched her struggle to regain movement, to find words that she knew were there but couldn't access. That's when I knew what I wanted to do with my life. Help people reconnect their minds with their bodies. Exactly. She turned to face him fully, her excitement evident. The brain is like the most complex computer ever created, but sometimes the connections get disrupted. My interfaces help rebuild those pathways or create new ones. And with your AI, we could create adaptive interfaces that learn and grow with the patient, Jericho finished, caught up in her enthusiasm. The possibilities really are endless. Their eyes met, and the intellectual excitement transformed into something more primal. The air between them grew thick with tension as they realized how close they had moved during their discussion. I love your passion, Jericho murmured, his thumb tracing her bottom lip. The way your eyes light up when you talk about your work. The way your brilliant mind makes connections others miss. Abena's breath hitched at his touch. I love how you understand, she whispered, how you see me, not just as a woman or a scientist, but all of me. The kiss that followed was inevitable, like gravity pulling two celestial bodies together. This time, when Jericho's hands found the zipper of her dress, Abena didn't stop him. The silk whispered as it fell away, revealing smooth skin that glowed in the moonlight. His breath caught at the sight of her. She was magnificent, a goddess made flesh. His hands trembled slightly as they traced the curves of her body, memorizing every perfect inch. Abena's heart thundered beneath his touch, her skin warming wherever his fingers traced. Beautiful, he breathed, the word inadequate for what he felt. Absolutely beautiful. Abena's fingers made quick work of his shirt buttons, pushing the fabric aside to explore the warm skin beneath. Every touch sent electricity through his veins. When her lips followed the path of her fingers, Jericho thought he might lose his mind. They came together with the same passion that had marked their first encounter. But this time, there was something more. A deeper connection born of shared dreams and midnight confessions. Every kiss, every touch, every shared breath felt like a promise. The yacht had reached the secluded cove, the anchor dropping automatically into the crystal-clear waters. Above them, the Miami sky was a blanket of stars, witnessing their union. The gentle rock of the boat added another layer of sensation to their lovemaking, as if the very ocean was blessing their connection. Later, much later, they lay tangled in soft blankets on the deck, their bodies still humming with aftershocks of pleasure. Abena traced lazy patterns on Jericho's chest while he played with her curls, now completely freed from their elegant arrangement. Our families are going to have opinions about all this, she murmured, though she didn't sound particularly concerned. Let them, Jericho replied, pulling her closer. They wanted us together. They just didn't expect us to fall in love on our own terms. Do you think that's what this is, love? He tilted her chin up so he could meet her eyes. I think this is something bigger than any word we have for it. Love seems inadequate for what I feel when I'm with you. Abena's eyes glistened with emotion. I know exactly what you mean. It's like finding a piece of yourself you didn't even know was missing. Like coming home, he agreed, kissing her softly. Speaking of which, move in with me. Abena pushed herself up on an elbow to look at him. We've known each other 2 days. And we're already engaged, he pointed out with a grin. Besides, I think we've established that normal timelines don't apply to us. She pretended to consider it, though her eyes sparkled with joy. Your penthouse does have an excellent view. Is that a yes? Instead of answering, she kissed him, pouring all her feelings into the connection. When they finally parted, both breathless, she whispered, "Yes. 1,000 times yes." The Miami moon smiled down on them as they sealed their decision with another passionate kiss. Their love story had begun with an arranged engagement and an unforgettable night of passion, but it was growing into something far more powerful. A partnership of equals, a fusion of hearts and minds, and a love that defied all conventional wisdom. As the night wrapped around them like a velvet cloak, they made love again under the stars, their bodies moving together with a familiarity that belied their short time together. Every touch, every kiss, every shared breath reaffirmed what they both knew in their souls. This was meant to be. The gentle waves lapped against the hull, creating a rhythm that matched their heartbeats. In this perfect moment, suspended between sea and stars, they were more than just two people in love. They were the beginning of something extraordinary, a love story that would change not only their lives, but the world itself. For in their union of hearts and minds, of passion and intellect, lay the potential to revolutionize the way humans connect, both with technology and with each other. Their love was more than just a personal journey. It was the catalyst for innovations that would help countless others. But for now, in this magical night on the waters of Biscayne Bay, they were simply Jericho and Abina, two souls who had found each other against all odds, writing their own love story under the Miami moon. Chapter 4. Family Ties. The Sunday morning sun bathed the Hadley estate's grand dining room in warm golden light as the family gathered for their traditional brunch. Abena sat beside her grandmother, Madame Efua Hadley, the family matriarch whose quiet wisdom had guided 3 generations of Hadleys to success. Madame Efua's keen eyes missed nothing as she watched her granddaughter absently stir honey into her tea. There was a glow about Abena that hadn't been there before, a softness in her expression that spoke of newfound love. Her fingers kept straying to Jericho's family ring, an antique piece that had belonged to his great-grandmother, though Abena didn't yet know its significance. "That's a beautiful ring, my dear," Madame Efua commented casually, hiding her knowing smile behind her teacup. "It looks quite familiar." Abena glanced down at the ring she'd been unconsciously touching. "Oh, this. It's Jericho's. He let me wear it last night when we were on the yacht. I should probably return it to him." Her grandmother's eyes sparkled with amusement. "Are you sure about that? It seems to suit you perfectly." Before Abena could question her grandmother's cryptic response, the dining room doors opened to admit Jericho himself. He was dressed casually in designer jeans and a light blue button-down that made his dark eyes even more striking. Abena's heart skipped at the sight of him, memories of their passionate night on the yacht flooding back. "I hope I'm not interrupting," he said, crossing the room to kiss Madame Efua's cheek with easy charm. The family matriarch had taken to him instantly, recognizing in him the same combination of brilliance and compassion she saw in her granddaughter. "You're always welcome here, my boy," Madame Efua assured him, patting the seat on her other side, "especially now that you're family." The word family still sent a thrill through Abena. Their whirlwind romance had shocked both families, though they were gradually coming around to the idea that their carefully arranged match had worked out better than they could have planned. Jericho caught Abena's eye across her grandmother, his gaze heated with memories of their night together. She felt herself flush under his scrutiny, remembering how his hands had traced every curve of her body beneath the stars. "I was just admiring Abena's ring," Madame Efua said innocently, though there was mischief in her eyes. It's remarkable how perfectly it fits her. Jericho's expression shifted subtly as he noticed the ring on Abena's finger. Something deep and possessive flashed in his eyes, making Abena's breath catch. "It does look perfect on you," he agreed, his voice low and intimate despite the public setting. "Ah, young love," Madame Efua sighed contentedly. "It reminds me of how your grandfather and I met, Abena. Did I ever tell you that story?" "No, Grandmama," Abena replied, grateful for the distraction from Jericho's intense gaze. "Please tell us." The old woman's eyes grew distant with memory. "It was in Accra, during the summer of 1965. I was studying medicine at the university, determined to become the first female doctor in my family. Your grandfather was already a successful businessman, and our families had arranged for us to meet." She paused, sipping her tea with a small smile, but fate had other plans. 2 weeks before the arranged introduction, we met by chance at a small cafe near the harbour. I was studying for my exams, and he was seeking shelter from a sudden storm. We talked for hours, not knowing we were meant to be matched. Abena and Jericho exchanged glances, the parallel to their own story obvious. "What happened when you discovered the arrangement?" Abena asked. "Oh, we kept it secret for weeks," Madame Efua chuckled. "We pretended to meet for the first time at the arranged dinner, then scandalized both families by announcing we were already in love. Your great-grandmother nearly fainted." Her eyes twinkled as she looked between them. Sometimes the heart knows what it wants before the mind can catch up, or before families can arrange it. Jericho reached across the table, taking Abena's hand. The simple touch sent electricity through her veins. "I'm beginning to believe that's true," he said softly. "Speaking of arrangements," Madame Efua continued, "that ring you're wearing, my dear, has quite a history. It belonged to Jericho's great-grandmother, Marina Basilio. She was quite a woman, helped build the family's first business empire during the 1940s, when women weren't supposed to have business sense." Abena started to slip the ring off her finger. "I had no idea it was such an important family piece. I should return it." "Don't you dare," Madame Efua said firmly. "That ring has been waiting for the right hand. Marina always said it would find its way to a woman who combined passion with purpose, love with ambition, rather like herself." Understanding dawned in Abena's eyes as she looked at Jericho. "Is this—" He moved to kneel beside her chair, taking her hand in both of his. "I was going to do this properly tonight, with candlelight and romance, but maybe here, with your grandmother's blessing, is even better." Abena's heart thundered in her chest as Jericho's eyes met hers with an intensity that made the rest of the world fade away. "We may have done everything backward," he said softly, "falling in love before we knew about the arrangement, making love before our first date, moving in together before a proper engagement. But some things deserve to be done right." He kissed her knuckles, just above where his great-grandmother's ring already sat. "Abena Hadley, you've turned my world upside down in the most magnificent way. You challenge me intellectually, inspire me professionally, and make my heart race with just a smile. Will you marry me? Not because our families arranged it, but because we chose each other." Tears sparkled in Abena's eyes as she cupped his face with her free hand. "Yes," she whispered, 1,000 times yes." Their kiss was sweet and tender, full of promise for their future together. Madame Efua dabbed at her eyes with a silk handkerchief, beaming at the young couple. "Marina would have loved you," she told Abena. "She had that same fire in her eyes that you get when discussing your neural interface research." "I wish I could have met her," Abena said softly, admiring the ring that now had so much more meaning. "Oh, she's here in spirit," Madame Efua assured her. "I suspect she had a hand in bringing you two together, arranged marriage or not. She always did like to meddle from beyond." The rest of the family began filtering into the dining room for brunch, exclaiming over the romantic scene they'd walked in on. Abina's mother burst into happy tears, while her father tried to maintain his dignity while obviously fighting emotion. Jericho pulled Abina to her feet, wrapping his arms around her waist. "Move in with me today," he murmured in her ear. "Why wait?" She turned in his embrace, pressing herself against him in a way that made his breath catch. "My research ... Your lab is closer to my penthouse than here anyway," he pointed out, his hand stroking her back. "And think of all the time we'll save not driving back and forth." "To work on our neural interface project, you mean?" she teased, her fingers playing with the buttons of his shirt. "Among other things," he growled softly, kissing her neck in a way that made her knees weak. "Children?" Madame Efua called out, amusement clear in her voice. "Perhaps save that for after brunch." They broke apart, laughing but not really embarrassed. The joy of their official engagement had them both glowing with happiness. As they took their seats at the table, Abena couldn't help stealing glances at her ring, now her engagement ring, and the wonderful man who had placed it there. The brunch passed in a blur of congratulations and family stories. Madame Efua regaled them with tales of Marina Basilio's business adventures, painting a picture of a woman ahead of her time. With each story, the ring on Abena's finger felt more right, as if it had indeed been waiting for her all along. After the meal, while the family dispersed to various corners of the estate, Jericho led Abena to the gardens. The Miami sun was high now, making the flowers glow with vibrant color. They found a secluded bench beneath a flowering bougainvillea, its purple blooms creating a natural canopy. "Happy?" Jericho asked, pulling her close. "Deliriously," she replied, snuggling into his embrace. "Though I can't believe you let me wear your great-grandmother's ring without telling me what it was." He chuckled, the sound rumbling pleasantly against her ear. "I wanted to see if it felt right to you naturally, without the weight of its history. The moment I saw it on your finger, I knew it belonged there." Abena lifted her head to look at him. "Just like I belong with you?" "Exactly like that." His kiss was tender at first, but quickly deepened as Abena shifted to straddle his lap. Her sundress rode up her thighs as she pressed closer, making Jericho groan. "We should stop," he murmured against her lips, even as his hands slid up her thighs. "Your entire family is nearby." She agreed, but made no move to pull away. Instead, she rolled her hips against his, drawing another groan from deep in his chest. "We could go home." The word home sent a thrill through him. "Your things can be packed and moved tomorrow." She kissed along his jaw to his ear. "Right now, I want to celebrate our engagement properly." Jericho stood in one smooth motion, keeping her wrapped around him. Abena laughed in delight, clinging to his shoulders as he carried her toward the house. They managed to make their excuses to the family with reasonable dignity, though Madame Efua's knowing smile suggested she wasn't fooled. The drive to Jericho's penthouse, their penthouse now, was charged with anticipation. Abena's hand rested high on his thigh as he drove, her fingers tracing patterns that tested his concentration. By the time they reached their building, both were nearly desperate with need. In the private elevator, Jericho pressed Abena against the wall, his lips claiming hers in a passionate kiss. Her legs wrapped around his waist as he lifted her, the position bringing their bodies into perfect alignment. The soft moan she released when he ground against her nearly undid his control. The elevator doors opened directly into their penthouse, but they barely noticed the spectacular view. Jericho carried Abena straight to the bedroom, laying her gently on the king-sized bed. She looked up at him with such love and desire that his heart nearly burst. "I love you," he said softly, reverently, "more than I ever thought possible." Abena reached for him, pulling him down to join her. "Show me," she whispered against his lips. Their lovemaking was different this time, slower, deeper, filled with the joy of their official engagement and the promise of their future together. Every touch was a vow, every kiss a declaration of love. Later, as they lay tangled in the sheets, Abena's head resting on Jericho's chest, she traced the ring that now meant so much more. "Tell me more about Marina," she requested. "I want to know everything about the woman who wore this ring before me." Jericho's fingers played with her curls as he spoke of his great-grandmother, her determination to succeed in a man's world, her passion for innovation, her deep love for her family. The parallels between Marina and Abena became clearer with each story. "She would have adored you," he concluded, kissing Abena's temple, "almost as much as I do." "I wish she could be at our wedding," Abena said softly. "She will be, in a way." Jericho lifted her hand, kissing the ring. "Her spirit lives in this ring and in the love it represents, just like your grandmother said." Abena shifted to look at him, her eyes soft with emotion. "I never thought I'd find this kind of love, the kind that fills every part of you, heart, mind, and soul." "I never thought I needed it," Jericho admitted, "until I met you and realized what I'd been missing." Their kiss was tender, full of promise for their future together. As the Miami sunset painted the sky in brilliant colors outside their windows, they held each other close, knowing that their love story, though it had begun with an arrangement, had become something far more powerful. It was a union of hearts and minds, of passion and purpose, blessed by both their families and the spirits of strong women who had come before. As night fell over Miami, Jericho and Abena drifted to sleep in each other's arms, their hearts beating in perfect synchronization, their love growing stronger with each passing moment. Chapter 5. Corporate Collision. The Miami Convention Center hummed with anticipation as the Global Tech Innovation Summit reached its pinnacle moment. The Grand Hall, packed with the world's leading minds in technology, waited for what promised to be the breakthrough presentation of the decade, the unveiling of Hadley-Basilio neural networks. Backstage, Abena adjusted her emerald silk suit, a design that perfectly balanced professionalism with subtle allure. Marina's ring caught the light as she reviewed her presentation notes one final time. The neural interface diagrams floating on her tablet showed the culmination of years of research, now enhanced by Jericho's quantum computing innovations. "Beautiful," Jericho's voice came from behind her, making her heart skip. He wasn't referring to the groundbreaking technology on her screen. She turned to face him and her breath caught. In his bespoke charcoal suit and deep green tie that matched her outfit, he looked devastatingly handsome. More than that, his eyes held that perfect blend of professional excitement and personal desire that never failed to make her pulse race. "The presentation or me?" she teased, reaching up to straighten his tie, though it didn't need it. "Both." His hands settled on her hips, pulling her closer. "Though you definitely edge out the neural pathways in that suit." Their kiss started professional appropriate, but quickly deepened as months of passion flared between them. Abena's hands slid inside his jacket as his fingers tangled in her curls, both temporarily forgetting they were minutes away from the most important presentation of their careers. "5 minutes to showtime," a stagehand called, forcing them apart. Jericho kept hold of her hand, his thumb stroking her palm. "Ready to change the world, Dr. Hadley?" "With you?" "Always, Mr. Basilio." The stage lights were brilliant as they walked out hand in hand. The audience's murmur grew as they noticed the casual intimacy between the two tech giants. Their engagement had made headlines, but this was their first professional collaboration. Abena took her position first, her presence commanding immediate attention. The holographic displays behind her came to life, showing complex neural pathway maps in stunning detail. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, her voice carrying clearly through the hall, "what if I told you that the barrier between human consciousness and artificial intelligence was about to be shattered?" Complete silence fell as every eye fixed on her. Jericho watched from the side, his heart swelling with pride and love. She was magnificent, brilliant, passionate, and utterly captivating. For years, neuroscience has dreamed of true brain-computer interfaces. Meanwhile, artificial intelligence has evolved toward ever more complex forms of processing. She turned to smile at Jericho, the love in her eyes visible even to the back row. When these technologies meet, and when their creators fall in love, magic happens. Jericho joined her seamlessly, their movements perfectly synchronized after months of working and living together. The holographic displays shifted to show their combined innovation, a neural interface that could not only read, but truly understand human thought patterns. By combining Dr. Hadley's breakthrough in synaptic mapping with our quantum AI architecture, Jericho explained, we've created something unprecedented, a true fusion of human and artificial intelligence. Their demonstration left the audience spellbound. Using volunteer test subjects, they showed how their interface could translate thoughts into clear digital signals, and how their AI could interpret and respond to those signals in real time. But this is more than just a technological breakthrough, Abena continued. This is about genuine human connection. Imagine being able to share not just words, but actual experiences, emotions, memories. Imagine truly understanding another person's perspective, Jericho added, his eyes meeting hers. Feeling what they feel, seeing what they see. Their perfect synchronization on stage was obvious to everyone watching. They finished each other's sentences, anticipated each other's movements, shared looks that spoke volumes. It was clear that this wasn't just a corporate merger or arranged match. This was a true partnership of equals. The demonstration reached its climax as they revealed the interface's potential for healing neurological conditions. The audience watched in awe as their technology helped a test subject with partial paralysis regain movement through neural pathway reconstruction. The standing ovation lasted nearly 15 minutes. As soon as they were backstage, Jericho pulled Abena into a passionate kiss that made her knees weak. "You were incredible," he murmured against her lips. "Absolutely magnificent." "We were incredible," she corrected, her fingers sliding into his hair, together. The heat between them built quickly, professional decorum forgotten. Jericho's hands roamed her body through the silk suit, making her gasp. "Penthouse," she managed between kisses. "Now." They barely made it through the private elevator ride to their home, hands and lips exploring with increasing urgency. As soon as the doors opened, Jericho lifted Abena into his arms, carrying her to their bedroom. The Miami sunset painted their room in shades of gold and rose, creating a magical atmosphere. Abena stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, the city spread out below them like a carpet of lights. Jericho moved behind her, his hands sliding down her arms. "I love watching you work," he murmured, pressing kisses along her neck. "Your passion, your brilliance. Do you have any idea how sexy you are when you're changing the world?" She turned to face him, her fingers making quick work of his tie and shirt buttons. "Show me," she whispered, her eyes dark with desire. His breath caught as she slipped off her suit jacket, revealing a silk camisole underneath. The thin fabric did little to hide her response to his touch. Slowly, reverently, he undressed her, each reveal of skin accompanied by kisses and caresses that made her tremble. When she stood before him, in nothing but moonlight and Marina's ring, Jericho thought his heart might stop. She was beyond beautiful. She was ethereal, perfect, his. Her heart thundered beneath his palm as he traced the curves of her body, memorizing every inch as if they hadn't already made love countless times. "I love you," he breathed against her skin. Mind, body, and soul. Their lovemaking was intense yet tender, each touch charged with the triumph of their presentation and the deep connection they shared. The Miami moon rose over their private paradise as they lost themselves in each other completely. Later, much later, they lay tangled in the sheets as stars appeared over the city. Abena traced lazy patterns on Jericho's chest while he played with her curls, both content in the afterglow of their professional and personal victory. "I've been thinking," she said softly, propping herself up to look at him. The moonlight silvered her skin, making her appear to glow, about the next phase of the interface. His fingers continued their gentle exploration of her back, enjoying the way she shivered at his touch. What if we could use it not just for healing or enhancement, but for true emotional connection? Imagine being able to share not just thoughts, but feelings, memories, dreams. Jericho's hand stilled as he considered the implications. Like giving people the kind of connection we have. Exactly. She kissed his chest, right over his heart, helping others understand each other the way we do. Their discussion of neural pathways and quantum processing led to another round of passionate exploration, this time slower and deeper. Every touch was charged with both intellectual excitement and physical desire, their minds and bodies connecting on every level. As dawn approached, they stood wrapped in sheets on their balcony, watching the sun rise over Miami. Their breakthrough technology would soon reshape human consciousness and connection. But in that moment, holding each other close, they celebrated their own unique bond. Their love story had begun with an arranged merger and an unforgettable night of passion, but it had grown into something far more powerful. A partnership that would not only unite their hearts, but potentially transform human consciousness itself. For in their union of hearts and minds, of passion and purpose, lay the potential to help others experience the kind of deep understanding they shared. Their love was more than just a personal journey. It was the catalyst for innovations that would change countless lives. The Miami morning wrapped around them like a warm embrace as they prepared for another day of changing the world together. Their shared vision of neural interfaces and quantum AI would soon reshape human connection and consciousness. But first, they would celebrate their own connection, writing new chapters in their ongoing love story. "Ready for the next breakthrough?" Jericho asked, pressing a kiss to Abena's shoulder. She turned in his embrace, her eyes sparkling with both love and intellectual excitement. "With you? I'm ready for anything." Their kiss was both tender and passionate, a perfect blend of their personal and professional partnership. Together they would push the boundaries of human consciousness and connection, their love serving as both inspiration and proof of what was possible when hearts and minds aligned perfectly. Chapter 6. Storm Warning. The Miami coast transformed with dramatic suddenness as the tropical storm approached. One moment, Abena was standing on her beachfront condo's balcony, analyzing data streams from their latest neural interface test on her tablet. The next, the sky darkened to an ominous purple-green as wind whipped the palm trees into frenzied motion. Her condo, kept as a private research retreat, offered a spectacular view of nature's power. Lightning split the sky, illuminating the turbulent ocean in brilliant flashes. The storm's approach mirrored the turning point she and Jericho had reached in their research. Wild, powerful, full of possibility. The security system chimed, announcing Jericho's arrival just as the first heavy drops began to fall. He appeared in the doorway, looking devastating in casual clothes, carrying what appeared to be several bags of groceries. "I thought we might get stuck here," he explained, setting down his supplies. The weather service is predicting this could last all night. Thunder crashed overhead as Abina moved to help him unpack. Our dinner reservation at Lamar is probably cancelled then. I came prepared. He pulled out containers from their favorite chef, along with several bottles of wine. Though I have to admit, being trapped here with you was part of the appeal. The power flickered ominously as they arranged dinner. Abina moved to light several large candles, their warm glow creating an intimate atmosphere against the darkening sky. The backup generator hummed to life, but they left the candles burning. "I love watching you in candlelight," Jericho murmured, pulling her close. "You look like something from a dream." Their kiss was sweet but quickly deepened as thunder rolled overhead. Abina's fingers tangled in his hair as his hands roamed her body, both forgetting about the meal he'd brought. A particularly loud crack of thunder made them jump apart, laughing. "Maybe we should eat first," Jericho suggested, though his hands stayed on her hips. "Build up our strength for later." They settled on the comfortable couch with their food, the storm creating a dramatic backdrop to their intimate dinner. Lightning illuminated the room in irregular bursts as they talked about their research, their families, their dreams. "Tell me something you've never told anyone else," Abena requested, curled against his side with a glass of wine. "Something from before we met." Jericho was quiet for a moment, his fingers playing with her curls. "I was terrified when I first took over Basilio Innovations," he finally admitted. "Not just of failure, of succeeding, but losing myself in the process, becoming nothing but the corporate role everyone expected. What changed? Meeting you." He kissed her temple. "Seeing how you balance innovation with authenticity, success with soul. You showed me it was possible to change the world while staying true to yourself." The vulnerability in his voice touched something deep in Abena's heart. She set aside her wineglass and straddled his lap, taking his face in her hands. "Your turn to learn something no one else knows," she whispered. "Tell me." "The night we met at the club. I almost didn't go. I was tired of being paraded around at tech events, tired of being seen as either a scientist or a woman. Never both, never whole." She traced his features with gentle fingers. "Then I saw you across the room, and for the first time I felt truly seen, all of me." His response was to kiss her deeply, his hands sliding up her back to pull her closer. The storm seemed to match their passion, thunder rolling as lightning painted dramatic shadows across their entangled forms. Abena's sundress proved easy to remove, revealing delicate lingerie that made Jericho's breath catch. No matter how many times they made love, the sight of her never failed to amaze him. His heart thundered so loudly he was sure she must hear it. "Beautiful," he breathed, the word inadequate for what he felt. Every curve, every inch of her was perfect, made more so by the love shining in her eyes. Their lovemaking was intense, yet tender, the storm providing a primal soundtrack to their passion. Each flash of lightning revealed new aspects of their connection, while thunder punctuated their gasps and moans. Later, wrapped in soft blankets on the couch, they watched nature's fury through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Abena's back was pressed to Jericho's chest, his arms wrapped securely around her. "I've been thinking," she murmured, watching lightning dance across the turbulent ocean, "about why our neural interface works so much better than previous attempts." His lips brushed her shoulder, more interested in her skin than technology at that moment. "It's because we understand something others missed, the emotional component of consciousness. They all tried to translate pure thought, but humans don't work that way. We think through feeling, understand through emotion." Jericho's hands stilled their exploration as he caught her meaning. "Like how we understand each other. Not just words and thoughts, but everything." She turned to face him. "Every touch, every look, every unspoken feeling. That's what we need to capture in the interface. Their discussion of emotional neural mapping led to another round of passionate exploration, this time in the bedroom. The storm's intensity seemed to feed their own, each crash of thunder driving them to deeper connection. As the night deepened, they lay tangled in sheets, sharing more secrets and dreams. Abena told him about her childhood in Ghana, about the moment she first became fascinated with neuroscience. Jericho shared stories of his early days in tech, of the failures and setbacks that had shaped his success. "Sometimes I wonder," Abena mused, tracing patterns on his chest, "if this is what our brains look like when we're together. All these beautiful connections forming and strengthening. The most sophisticated neural network ever created," Jericho agreed, pulling her closer, "though I doubt any computer could fully capture what I feel for you." Their kisses grew passionate once more as the storm began to ease. This time their lovemaking was slower, deeper, each touch charged with the revelations they'd shared through the night. As dawn approached, they stood wrapped in sheets on the balcony, watching the sun break through dissipating clouds. The Miami beach was transformed by the storm's passage, altered but beautiful, like their own relationship after a night of deeper understanding. "Thank you," Jericho murmured against Abena's hair. "For what?" "For sharing your private sanctuary with me, for trusting me with your secrets, for showing me that true strength lies in vulnerability." She turned in his embrace, rising on tiptoes to kiss him softly. "Thank you for seeing all of me, the scientist and the woman, the professional and the passionate, everything I am." Their final round of lovemaking was sweet and tender, celebrating the new depth of understanding they'd reached. The morning sun painted their skin in gold as they moved together, their connection stronger than ever. As they finally dressed to face the day, both knew the storm had changed them. Like the beach below, they had been reshaped by nature's power, not damaged, but refined, strengthened by the experience. Their love had already transformed their lives in magical ways, but this night had deepened their connection beyond what either thought possible. In sharing their fears and dreams, their vulnerabilities and hopes, they had created something even more powerful than their technological innovations. For in their union of hearts and minds, of passion and purpose, lay the key to truly revolutionary human connection. Their love was more than just a personal journey. It was the blueprint for helping others achieve the same deep understanding they shared. The Miami morning wrapped around them like a warm embrace as they prepared to face another day of changing the world together. Their shared vision of neural interfaces and quantum AI would soon reshape human consciousness. But first, they would celebrate their own connection, writing new chapters in their ongoing love story. Chapter 7. The Truth Unravels. The annual Basilio family gala transformed their estate into a wonderland of lights and luxury, but this year was different. This year marked the official announcement of Basilio Innovations' quantum computing breakthrough, and Jericho had insisted Abena present their combined neural interface applications to the board of directors. Abena stood in her private dressing room, making final adjustments to her emerald gown, a color that had become her signature since that first night at the club. Through the mirror, she caught sight of a leather-bound book that had fallen from the shelf during her earlier search for earrings. Curiosity drew her to pick it up. The leather was aged, the pages yellowed with time. As she opened it, elegant handwriting caught her eye. Marina Basilio's personal journal. Her heart skipped. Marina's influence had touched so many aspects of her relationship with Jericho, from the ring on her finger to their shared vision of technology's future. Without thinking too much about privacy, after all, she was practically family now, she began to read. The early entries detailed Marina's business innovations, her fight to be taken seriously in a male-dominated world. But then, dated 25 years ago, an entry made Abena's breath catch. Met with Elizabeth Hadley today. Her research into neural pathways is revolutionary. More importantly, Her daughter shows the same brilliant spark. Young Abena reminds me of myself at that age, that perfect blend of innovation and tradition. She would be ideal for my grandson when the time comes. The merger of our companies could change the world, but the merger of our families could create something even more extraordinary. Abena's hands trembled as she turned the pages, finding more entries about careful plans laid over decades. Marina and her grandmother had orchestrated everything, the business connections, the chance encounters that never quite happened, the carefully maintained relationship between the families. "My darling," Jericho's voice came from the doorway, making her jump. "The presentation starts in... What's wrong?" She wordlessly handed him the journal, watching his face as he read. Emotions flickered across his features, surprise, understanding, and finally, something like wonder. "They planned it all," he said softly, moving to take her in his arms. "For decades, every business deal, every social event." "Are you angry?" Abena asked, though his gentle touch was already answering her question. "How could I be?" He cupped her face in his hands. "Look what their planning gave me, the most brilliant, beautiful, perfect woman in the world." Their kiss was tender at first, but quickly deepened as emotions overwhelmed them. Abena's hands slid inside his tuxedo jacket as his fingers tangled in her curls, both forgetting they were expected downstairs. "Wait," she gasped as his lips found that sensitive spot behind her ear. "The presentation can wait a few minutes," he growled softly, his hands already working on the zipper of her dress. "Right now, I need to show you exactly how real this is, planned or not." The emerald silk fell away, revealing delicate lingerie that made Jericho's breath catch. No matter how many times they made love, the sight of her never failed to amaze him. His heart thundered so loudly he was sure she must hear it. "Beautiful," he breathed, the word inadequate for what he felt. Every curve, every inch of her was perfect, made more so by the love shining in her eyes. Their lovemaking was intense, yet tender, each touch charged with the revelation of their family's long-running scheme. But instead of feeling manipulated, each kiss felt like reclaiming their story as their own. Later, as they helped each other dress again, a plan began forming in Abena's mind. "We shouldn't tell them we know," she suggested, adjusting Jericho's bow tie. "No?" His hands lingered on her hips. "Why not?" "Think about it," she smiled mischievously. "They've spent decades planning this elaborate scheme. Why not let them think it's working exactly as they intended? While we know we fell in love on our own terms," Jericho finished, catching her meaning. "I love your devious mind almost as much as I love the rest of you." They descended to the gala hand in hand, sharing secret smiles at the proud looks their families exchanged. The ballroom was filled with Miami's elite, all gathered to witness the announcement of their technological breakthrough. On stage, they presented their innovation with perfect synchronization. The neural interface demonstrations drew gasps of amazement. But it was their obvious connection that truly captured the audience. Every movement, every shared glance spoke of a deep bond that went far beyond business collaboration. "The future of human consciousness," Abena concluded their presentation, "lies not in artificial intelligence alone, but in the genuine connections between hearts and minds." The standing ovation lasted nearly 10 minutes. As they made their way through the crowd afterward, accepting congratulations, they overheard snippets of their families' conversations. Perfect match. Exactly as planned. Marina would be so proud. Each comment made them squeeze each other's hands, sharing in their private knowledge. Let their families think their scheme had worked perfectly. The truth was far more magical. They had found each other despite the arrangements, not because of them. As the evening progressed, they slipped away to the estate's gardens. The Miami moon painted everything in silver light as they found a secluded spot among the bougainvillea. "Dance with me," Jericho pulled her close as music drifted from the ballroom. Abena melted against him, her head resting on his chest, where she could hear his heart beating in time with hers. "I can't believe how long they've been planning this," she murmured, "since we were children. And yet," he kissed her temple, "somehow we managed to fall in love completely on our own terms. Did we, though?" She looked up at him thoughtfully. "Or were we somehow destined for this? Marina seemed so certain." Instead of answering with words, Jericho captured her lips in a kiss that expressed everything he felt. Their passion flared instantly, hands beginning to wander as the music and party faded into background noise. This time, their lovemaking was playful, full of laughter and joy. They celebrated their secret knowledge and their genuine love in the most intimate way possible, letting the Miami night wrap around them like silk. Later, much later, they rejoined the party with slightly mussed clothes and glowing faces. Their families beamed with pride, attributing their obvious happiness to the success of their long-running scheme. "Should we ever tell them?" Abena whispered as they shared one last dance. "Maybe at our 50th anniversary," Jericho suggested, pulling her closer, "when they can't possibly doubt how real this is." The gala continued late into the night, a celebration of both technological innovation and family connections. But for Jericho and Abena, it was a celebration of something more, their ability to find true love even within the framework of careful planning. As they finally headed home to their penthouse, both were content with their decision to keep their discovery private. Let their families have their satisfaction. The truth of their love was beyond any arrangement. In their private elevator, Jericho pulled Abena close for another passionate kiss. "Stay with me forever," he murmured against her lips. "Wild horses couldn't drag me away," she promised, then laughed, or carefully orchestrated family schemes. Their final round of lovemaking that night was slow and sweet, each touch an affirmation of their genuine connection. The Miami moon smiled down on them as they lost themselves in each other, writing their own love story within the margins of their family's careful plans. Their love had transcended every arrangement, every scheme, every careful manipulation. What had begun as a decades-long plan had blossomed into something far more powerful. A partnership of equals, a fusion of hearts and minds, a passion that only grew stronger with time. For in their union lay not just the fulfillment of Marina's vision, but something even more extraordinary. A love that had found its own way, growing wild and free within the carefully tended garden of family expectations. As they drifted to sleep in each other's arms, both knew that while their families had planted the seed, what had grown was entirely their own magnificent creation. Their love story would continue on their own terms, genuine and powerful and perfect in its own unique way. Chapter 8. Love in the Lab. The Hadley Neuroscience Research Center cast blue-tinted shadows across its pristine grounds as midnight approached. In her private lab, Abena stood surrounded by a constellation of holographic neural pathways, each glowing strand representing months of breakthrough research. The latest test results from their combined neural interface and quantum AI system showed something unprecedented. Emotional patterns translating directly into digital signals. She was so absorbed in the data streams that she didn't notice the lab door opening. The first indication of another presence was the familiar scent of Jericho's cologne and the soft hum of the security system acknowledging his biometric clearance. "Still chasing that breakthrough?" His voice was warm honey in her ear as his arms slipped around her waist. The holographic displays reflected off his skin, making him appear to be wrapped in the same neural patterns she'd been studying. "Look at this," she said excitedly, not leaving his embrace, but gesturing to a particular data cluster. "The emotional resonance patterns are actually strengthening the quantum coherence. It's like..." like love making the connection stronger. His lips found that sensitive spot behind her ear. I think we might need to conduct some hands-on research into that phenomenon. Abena turned in his arms, ready to playfully scold him for distracting her, but stopped short. He had transformed her lab while she was absorbed in her work. Candles flickered on every safe surface, their warm light contrasting beautifully with the cool blue of the holograms. A table had been set up in the corner, complete with fine china and crystal glasses, but what truly caught her attention was the modification he'd made to her holographic display system. The neural pathways now danced in time with their heartbeats, creating a mesmerizing symphony of light and emotion. "You hacked my display settings," she accused, though her smile betrayed her delight. "Enhanced them," he corrected, pulling her closer. "Now they show what I see every time I look at you. Pure magic." The kiss they shared was electric, enhanced by the swirling lights around them. Abena's hands slid inside his jacket as his fingers tangled in her curls, both forgetting about dinner for the moment. "Wait!" she gasped as his lips traced her jaw. "The new test results." "Can wait." His hands found the buttons of her lab coat. "Right now, I want to conduct a different kind of experiment." The lab coat fell first, followed by her professional attire. Each piece of clothing removed revealed more of her to the shifting light of neural pathways and candlelight. When she stood before him in delicate lingerie, the holograms painted patterns across her skin that made her appear otherworldly. "Beautiful," Jericho breathed, his heart thundering so loudly he was sure the neural monitors would pick up the signal. "Absolutely perfect." His own clothes joined hers on the floor as they came together with passionate urgency. The lab equipment around them seemed to respond to their energy, displays flickering in time with their movements. The neural interface prototypes hummed softly, as if acknowledging the profound connection they shared. Later, wrapped in the spare lab coat they'd found, they fed each other bites of the now cold dinner. The holographic displays continued their dance around them, creating an intimate universe of light and shadow. "I've been thinking," Abena said, curled in Jericho's lap as they shared a glass of wine, "about why our interface works so much better than previous attempts." His fingers traced patterns on her thigh beneath the lab coat. "It's us." She sat up excitedly, her eyes bright with discovery. "Our connection, it's not just emotional or physical, it's both, and more." She gestured to the swirling neural patterns. "Look how the pathways strengthen when we're together." "What if that's the key we've been missing?" Jericho caught her meaning immediately, his own scientific curiosity igniting. "A love-enhanced quantum state? That's ... revolutionary." She turned to face him fully. "We need to run some tests." What followed was a unique blend of scientific exploration and passionate connection. They used the neural interface prototypes to map their own emotional responses, each kiss and caress creating new patterns in the holographic displays. The data was extraordinary. Their neural synchronization reached levels never before recorded, their quantum coherence strengthening with each shared moment of intimacy. "This is incredible," Abena murmured, watching their combined neural patterns dance across the screens. "We're literally changing the quantum field through emotional connection." "Should we include this in the next research paper?" Jericho teased, his hands sliding under the lab coat she wore. "Love as a quantum amplifier, a case study in neural enhancement." Their laughter turned to gasps as passion overtook scientific curiosity once more. This time, their lovemaking was slower, deeper, both aware of the profound implications of their connection. The lab equipment continued recording, capturing data that would revolutionize their understanding of human consciousness and quantum mechanics. As dawn approached, they lay tangled together on the comfortable couch in her office, watching their neural patterns continue their intimate dance above them. The night had yielded both scientific breakthrough and deeper personal connection. We should write this up, Abena mused, tracing patterns on Jericho's chest. Not for publication, but for our personal records, the night we discovered love's quantum signature. Speaking of signatures, he reached for his discarded jacket, pulling out a small box. I had another experiment in mind. Inside was a quantum-enhanced ring designed to pair with Marina's antique piece. As he slipped it onto her finger, their neural patterns erupted in a spectacular display of synchronized light. "The stones are quantum-entangled," he explained. "Like us, connected across any distance, strengthening each other's signal." Abena's eyes filled with tears as she examined the ring. It was a perfect fusion of their innovations, traditional jewelry enhanced with their breakthrough technology. Like their love, it represented the beautiful union of past and future. Their kiss was tender at first, but quickly deepened as the implications of his gift sank in. The lab equipment recorded unprecedented levels of neural synchronization as they came together again, their passion enhanced by the profound symbolism of the moment. Later, as they finally prepared to face the day, both knew they had discovered something far more significant than they'd imagined. Their love wasn't just a personal connection. It was a force capable of affecting quantum states, of strengthening neural bonds, of transforming consciousness itself. The Miami sunrise painted their lab in golden light as they began documenting their discoveries. Their research had already promised to revolutionize human consciousness. Now, with the addition of love's quantum signature, they were on the verge of something even more extraordinary. Their love story had begun with an arranged merger and an unforgettable night of passion. Now it was evolving into something that transcended both business and pleasure, a union of hearts and minds that could literally change the fundamental forces of nature. For in their connection lay not just personal happiness, but the key to understanding consciousness itself. Their love had become both the subject and method of their research, proving that the greatest scientific breakthroughs sometimes require opening not just the mind, but also the heart. The morning light caught both rings, Marina's antique piece and the quantum-enhanced new addition, creating rainbows that danced with their neural patterns. Like the rings, like their love, they had found a perfect way to honor tradition while embracing innovation. Together, they would continue pushing the boundaries of science and consciousness, their love serving as both inspiration and proof of what was possible when hearts and minds aligned in perfect quantum harmony. "Ready for more experiments?" Jericho asked, helping Abena into a fresh lab coat. Her smile was both scientific and seductive. "With you? Always. Though perhaps we should focus on the less intimate ones during business hours." Their laughter merged with the hum of lab equipment as they began their day, both knowing that their night of passion and discovery had forever changed not just their relationship, but potentially the future of human consciousness itself. Chapter 9. The Proposal. The Miami sunset painted the sky in brilliant shades of gold and crimson as Jericho's private helicopter lifted off from the Basilio Industries helipad. In the passenger seat, Abena watched the city transform below them, completely unaware of the elaborate plans her fiancé had set in motion. They were already technically engaged. She wore Marina's ring. Their families had announced the merger, and they were living together in blissful happiness. But Jericho had decided that they deserved a proper proposal, one that came purely from his heart rather than family arrangements. "Where are we going?" Abena asked, her voice filled with curiosity. She was dressed elegantly in a deep purple evening gown that made her skin glow. Jericho had asked her to dress up for what she thought was a business dinner. "You'll see," he replied mysteriously, guiding the helicopter toward the coast. The setting sun reflected off the ocean, turning the water into liquid fire. Abena's breath caught as they approached South Beach. Below them, on a private stretch of sand, Thousands of lights had been arranged to spell out, "Marry me." The message was visible only from above, surrounded by a heart made of flaming torches. "Jericho," she whispered, her eyes filling with tears. He engaged the autopilot and turned to face her fully. "I know we're already engaged. I know our families arranged it, and fate made sure we fell in love anyway. But I wanted to do this right, to ask you properly. Not because of business or family expectations, but because I can't imagine spending a single day of my life without you." The helicopter hovered above the message as Jericho reached into his jacket pocket, producing a small velvet box. Inside was a ring that complemented Marina's antique piece, a stunning modern design featuring a rare purple diamond. "The old and the new," he explained softly. "Like us, combining tradition with innovation, bringing together the best of both worlds." Abina's heart thundered in her chest as Jericho took her hand. The Miami sunset bathed them in golden light as he spoke words that came straight from his soul. "Abina Hadley, you've transformed my world in ways I never imagined possible. You challenge me intellectually, inspire me professionally, and make my heart race with just a smile. Every morning I wake up grateful that our family's schemes brought us together, but even more grateful that we fell in love on our own terms." He slipped the new ring onto her finger alongside Marina's, the two pieces complementing each other perfectly. "Will you marry me? Not because of arrangements or mergers, but because we choose each other every day." "Yes," Abina whispered, tears of joy streaming down her face, 1,000 times yes. Their kiss was sweet and passionate, filled with promise for their future together. The helicopter's autopilot kept them steady above the burning message on the beach as they lost themselves in each other. When they finally parted, both slightly breathless, Jericho guided the helicopter down to the private beach. A table had been set up near the water's edge, surrounded by more flickering lights and scattered rose petals. "You thought of everything," Abena said softly as they touched down. "You deserve everything," he replied, helping her from the helicopter. "And this is just the beginning." The evening air was warm and fragrant with tropical flowers as they walked hand in hand to the table. Champagne waited on ice, along with a gourmet dinner from their favorite Miami chef. "Dance with me," Jericho asked, pulling her close before they reached the table. Music began playing from hidden speakers, their song from that first night at the club. Abena melted against him as they swayed together, the ocean providing a gentle rhythm beneath the music. Her head rested on his chest, where she could hear his heart beating in time with hers. "I love you," she murmured, lifting her face for a kiss. "More than I ever thought possible." Jericho's response was to kiss her deeply, his hands sliding down her back to pull her closer. The kiss quickly became heated as passion flared between them, intense as ever despite their months together. "The dinner will get cold," Abena whispered against his lips, though she made no move to pull away. "Let it," he growled softly, his hands roaming her body through the silk of her dress. "Right now I'm hungry for something else entirely." The private beach was secluded, hidden from view by natural rock formations. As the last rays of sunset faded into twilight, their passion built like a gathering storm. Abena's fingers made quick work of Jericho's tie and shirt buttons, eager to feel his skin against hers. His own hands found the zipper of her dress, slowly revealing the smooth skin beneath. When her gown fell away, Jericho's breath caught. She was wearing lingerie in the same deep purple as her dress, the delicate lace making her skin glow in the flickering torchlight. His heart thundered so loudly he was sure she must hear it. "Beautiful," he breathed, the word inadequate for what he felt. Every curve, every inch of her was perfect, made more so by the love shining in her eyes. They came together with the same passion that had marked their first night, but now enhanced by months of intimate knowledge and deeper emotion. The sound of waves provided a rhythm for their lovemaking as they lost themselves in each other completely. Later, much later, they finally made it to dinner. Wrapped in soft blankets beneath the stars, they fed each other bites of the now cold but still delicious meal, interspersing the food with kisses and caresses. "Tell me what you're thinking," Jericho requested, watching Abena admire her 2 rings in the torchlight. "I'm thinking about how perfectly these rings represent us," she replied, snuggling closer to him. "The old and the new, tradition and innovation, family legacy and personal choice. Just like our love story, arranged by family but made real by choice." His arms tightened around her. "No arrangement could have created what we have. This is all ours." She turned to face him, the blanket slipping to reveal tempting glimpses of skin. "Show me again how real it is." Their second round of lovemaking was slower, deeper, each touch charged with the renewed promises they'd made. The stars wheeled overhead as they expressed their love in the most primal way possible, their bodies moving together in perfect harmony. As midnight approached, they lay tangled together on the beach, listening to the waves and watching the stars. Abena traced lazy patterns on Jericho's chest while he played with her curls. "What do you think our families will say about this second proposal?" she asked, admiring how her rings caught the torchlight. "They'll probably claim they planned it too," he chuckled, kissing her temple. "Though I doubt they expected us to celebrate quite so thoroughly." Abena laughed, the sound mixing with the ocean's rhythm. "I love that we keep finding ways to make this relationship our own, even with all their meddling." Speaking of which, Jericho's hands began wandering again, making her gasp. "Want to scandalize them further by eloping? Don't tempt me." She arched into his touch, "Though I think our mothers would never forgive us." Their kisses grew passionate once more as the Miami night wrapped around them like silk. This time their lovemaking was playful, full of laughter and joy, celebrating their love in the most intimate way possible. The stars began to fade as dawn approached, but neither made any move to leave their private paradise. They had the beach reserved until morning, and they intended to make the most of every moment. "I never thought I could be this happy," Abena murmured, watching the first hints of sunrise color the horizon. "This complete." "This is just the beginning," Jericho promised, pulling her closer. "We have our whole lives to discover new ways to be happy together." They made love once more as the sun rose over the ocean, their bodies silhouetted against the growing light. Each touch was both familiar and thrilling, each kiss both comfort and excitement. As they finally dressed to leave, the morning sun painting everything in soft gold, they knew that this night had marked another milestone in their extraordinary love story. The second proposal, the new ring joining the old, the passionate celebration, all of it was uniquely theirs, untouched by family schemes or business arrangements. The helicopter lifted off as full daylight arrived, carrying them back to their regular lives. But now they had another perfect memory to cherish, another chapter in their ongoing romance. Their love story had begun with an arranged merger and an unforgettable night of passion, but it had grown into something far more powerful, a partnership that defied expectations while fulfilling destinies. Every day they chose each other anew, their love growing stronger with each passing moment. As Miami spread out below them, glittering in the morning sun, they held hands and dreamed of their future together. Their love had already transformed their lives in magical ways, but the best was yet to come. For in their union of hearts and minds, of passion and purpose, lay infinite possibilities. Their families might have arranged their first meeting, but everything since then had been their own magnificent creation. A love story for the ages, written in the language of neural pathways and quantum computations, of passionate kisses and tender embraces, of shared dreams and endless devotion. Chapter 10. Preparations and Passions. The Biltmore Hotel's presidential suite had been transformed into an extension of their research lab, merging wedding preparations with the breakthrough they'd discovered during their midnight experiment 2 months ago. Holographic displays showed the quantum resonance patterns they'd first observed during their intimate lab encounter, now refined into something extraordinary. The emotional quantum signatures are perfectly calibrated, Abena explained to both families, who watched in amazement as she demonstrated their innovation. The fabric samples around her shifted and sparkled, responding to the neural patterns they'd mapped during their research. We discovered that love actually creates unique quantum states. Now we can integrate that into every aspect of the ceremony. Isabella Basilio touched one of the samples, gasping as it responded to her emotional state. "This is what you discovered that night in the lab, when you found love's quantum signature?" "Part of it," Jericho replied, entering with more testing equipment. Their eyes met across the room, both remembering the passionate research that had led to this breakthrough. "We found that genuine emotion creates specific quantum entanglement patterns. The stronger the feeling, the stronger the resonance," Abena finished, the fabric in her hands glowing brighter as she looked at him. Their quantum-linked rings pulsed in harmony, demonstrating the principle. Their families had gathered to help with wedding preparations, but now they were participating in the final testing of a technological revolution. The traditional elements of their ceremony would be enhanced by the quantum emotional interface they'd developed together. "The neural sensors are most responsive to deep emotional connections," Abena continued, showing how different fabric samples reacted to various feelings. "Family bonds, long-term love, profound joy, they all create unique signatures." Madame Efua watched with knowing eyes as her granddaughter demonstrated the technology. "Like your midnight discovery about love's quantum effects," she said with a slight smile, "though perhaps we'll keep those specific test results private." Abena blushed, remembering the intimate nature of their research, while Jericho coughed slightly. Their breakthrough had come during a particularly passionate moment in the lab, when they'd noticed their neural patterns creating unprecedented quantum coherence. The wedding planner arrived with specialized equipment they'd developed in the weeks since their discovery. "The quantum emotional amplifiers are ready for testing," she announced. "Shall we try the ceremony configuration?" The suite transformed as they activated the full system. The quantum-enhanced fabric samples responded to the emotional resonance in the room, creating patterns of light and color that reflected the love and joy present. During the ceremony, Jericho explained to their fascinated families, "These quantum fields will allow guests to actually feel the depth of our connection, not just see it, experience it. Though at a carefully controlled intensity," Abena added quickly, remembering their first unshielded tests in the lab. Those raw, emotional quantum signatures had been overwhelming, though wonderfully so. A message from the lab appeared on their quantum-linked rings. The latest test results showed perfect synchronization. Their breakthrough was ready for its public debut. "We should celebrate," Jericho murmured in Abena's ear as their families examined the technology. "Perhaps recreate some of our original research conditions?" Her pulse quickened at his suggestion. "The garden quantum field needs testing," she replied innocently. "We should ensure the emotional resonance patterns are properly calibrated." They slipped away while their families were distracted, making their way to the hotel's private gardens. The quantum enhancement systems they'd installed created a shimming field of light around them, responding to their growing desire. "Beautiful," Jericho breathed, as Abena's dress caught the quantum light, the fabric rippling with patterns of love and passion. His heart thundered so loudly the neural sensors picked up the rhythm, creating synchronized pulses of light. Their kiss started soft, but quickly deepened as months of shared discovery and passion flared between them. The garden's quantum field responded to their emotional state, creating a private light show that reflected their rising desire. They found a secluded corner where ancient stone walls met their modern quantum privacy screens. The technology that had sparked during their intimate lab research now surrounded them, enhancing every sensation. The quantum-enhanced fabric of Abina's dress responded perfectly to Jericho's touch, just as it had during their initial tests. Each caress created ripples of light and sensation, their breakthrough technology amplifying their natural connection. "I love seeing our discovery at work," Jericho murmured, watching patterns of light dance across Abina's skin as the dress slipped away. "Though I love even more remembering how we made that discovery." Their lovemaking was enhanced by the quantum field around them, each touch creating cascades of light and sensation. The technology they developed in passionate research now served to deepen their intimate connection even further. Later, as they helped each other dress, the quantum fabric perfectly restored itself, another feature they developed after several heated research sessions in the lab. "We should head back," Abena said reluctantly, watching their quantum signatures slowly stabilize. "The final ceremony calibrations can wait a few more minutes," Jericho finished, pulling her close for another kiss. The garden's quantum field pulsed with renewed energy, as passion flared between them again. They eventually returned to find their families deep in discussion about the ceremony arrangements. The quantum emotional sharing would be a perfect blend of their scientific breakthrough and their personal journey. "The neural interface range is set," the wedding planner confirmed. "Guests will feel your emotional connection clearly, but not overwhelmingly. We've incorporated all the refinements from your lab research." Though no one mentioned it directly, everyone knew exactly what kind of research had led to those refinements. The knowing smiles their families exchanged spoke volumes. The rest of the day passed in a whirlwind of preparations, each element enhanced by their quantum emotional technology. They tested neural systems, calibrated emotional resonance fields, and refined the sharing protocols they discovered in the lab. That evening, exhausted but happy, they escaped to their private suite. The quantum field around them responded automatically to their emotional state, creating a cocoon of soft light and sensation. "Remember when we first discovered this?" Abena asked, watching patterns of quantum light dance between them. "In the lab that night? How could I forget?" Jericho pulled her close, their quantum-linked rings pulsing in harmony. "Though I seem to recall we needed several confirmation tests." Their kisses grew passionate once more as the suite's quantum field recognized their desires. The lighting shifted automatically while their neural-enhanced environment responded to their emotional resonance. This time their lovemaking was slow and sweet, celebrated by the very technology they'd discovered together. Each touch created ripples of quantum light, their breakthrough enhancing while never overshadowing their natural connection. As they drifted to sleep in each other's arms, their quantum-linked rings maintained their connection even in dreams. The technology they'd discovered during passionate research now served to deepen their bond in every moment. The Miami moon smiled down on them as they slept, its light creating patterns in the quantum fabric of their future. Tomorrow they would finalize the ceremony preparations, sharing their breakthrough with loved ones. But tonight they celebrated the unique path of discovery that had led them here. For in their union lay not just personal happiness, but scientific revolution. Their shared vision of quantum-enhanced emotional connection would soon change human interaction forever. But first, they would celebrate their own connection, the passion that had sparked their greatest discovery. Their love had transcended everything: family arrangements, professional collaboration, and even the boundaries of quantum physics. In their efforts to understand each other more deeply, they had uncovered principles that would help all of humanity connect more profoundly. The quantum light pulsed softly around them as they slept, their breakthrough technology standing guard over their dreams. Tomorrow would bring more preparations, but tonight they rested in the glow of their twin achievements, revolutionary science born from revolutionary love. Chapter 11. The Truth Revealed. Vizcaya Gardens glowed in the Miami twilight, the historic villa's waterfront terraces illuminated by thousands of twinkling lights. The rehearsal dinner setting was perfect, a blend of old-world elegance and tropical beauty that matched their fusion of tradition and innovation. For months, Jericho and Abina had kept their discovery of Marina's journal secret, watching with private amusement as their families continued their careful orchestration. But tonight, on the eve of their wedding, they had planned something special. Abena stood in one of the villa's private rooms, gazing out at the gardens where their guests were gathering. The sunset painted everything in shades of gold, reminding her of that first night at the club when their eyes had met across the crowded room. "Ready for the grand reveal?" Jericho's voice came from behind her as his arms slipped around her waist. He pressed a kiss to that sensitive spot behind her ear, making her shiver despite the warm evening. "More than ready," she replied, turning in his embrace. Her fingers traced the line of his jaw as she studied him in the golden light. "Though I almost feel bad for keeping them in suspense so long." "They kept us in suspense for decades," he reminded her with a grin. "I think a few months is fair play." Their kiss started soft, but quickly deepened, months of shared secrets and passion flaring between them. Abena's hand slid inside his jacket as his fingers tangled in her curls, both forgetting momentarily about their plans. A knock at the door forced them apart, though Jericho kept her close. "Everyone's seated for dinner," the wedding coordinator announced. They descended to the courtyard hand in hand, sharing secret smiles at what was to come. Their families waited at the head table, beaming with pride at what they still thought was their perfectly executed matchmaking. The Miami evening was perfect, warm but not humid, with a gentle breeze carrying the scent of jasmine and sea salt. Fairy lights twinkled in the ancient trees as waiters served the first course. Madame Efua, resplendent in traditional Ghanaian formal wear, stood to offer the first toast. Her eyes held a knowing gleam that made Abina wonder if her grandmother had suspected their knowledge all along. "To the happy couple," she began, her voice carrying clearly across the courtyard, "and to the power of—" she paused significantly, "destiny." Jericho and Abena exchanged glances. It was time. They stood together, seamlessly in sync as always. "Speaking of destiny," Jericho began, "we have something to share." He nodded to the tech team they'd arranged. Suddenly, the garden walls came alive with projected images, pages from Marina's journal, carefully selected entries spanning decades of planning. "We found this months ago," Abina continued, watching their families' faces shift from confusion to shock. Marina's personal journal, detailing every step of her grand plan. The projections showed entry after entry, the initial meeting with Elizabeth Hadley, notes about young Abina's potential, calculations about timing the merger, even sketches of the wedding venue they'd spontaneously chosen. 25 years of careful planning," Jericho said, his voice warm with affection rather than accusation. "Every business deal, every social event, every seemingly casual suggestion. All leading to this moment," Abena finished, "though perhaps not quite the way you expected." Their families sat in stunned silence as the implications sank in. Isabella Basilio was the first to find her voice. How long have you known?" "Since the summer gala," Abena admitted, "when I found Marina's journal while getting ready." "But you seemed so genuinely in love," her mother protested. "So natural." "Because we are," Jericho replied simply, pulling Abena closer. "We didn't fall in love because of your planning. We fell in love despite it." Understanding began dawning on their faces as more journal entries appeared on the walls, the carefully orchestrated meetings that never happened because they'd already met, the subtle manipulations they'd playfully followed while making their own choices. "You've been playing us," Antonio accused, but he was grinning. "All these months." "Consider it payback for 25 years of scheming," Abena laughed. "Though we have to admit your plan worked better than you could have imagined." Madame Efua's laughter rang out, rich and knowing. "I told Marina you were too clever not to figure it out," she revealed. "Though I must say, you handled the revelation beautifully." "You knew?" Both families turned to her in surprise. "Of course I knew," she smiled. "I saw it in their eyes months ago, that mix of amusement and love, watching us all try to manipulate what had already happened naturally." The tension broke as laughter rippled through the gathering. Soon, everyone was sharing their parts in the grand scheme, the business maneuvers, the coincidental suggestions, the careful preparations that had spanned decades. "I have to know," Jericho's father asked eventually, "if you knew about the arrangement, why follow along with our suggestions for the wedding?" Abena and Jericho exchanged loving glances. "Because sometimes," Abena explained, "your manipulations actually aligned perfectly with what we wanted. And watching you try to subtly guide us toward choices we'd already made was honestly entertaining," Jericho added, earning more laughter. As the evening progressed, they shared more details of their discovery and their decision to keep it secret. The projected journal entries continued telling the story of Marina's vision, now transformed into something even more beautiful by genuine love. Later, they slipped away to Vizcaya's secluded rose garden. The moon had risen, casting silver light across the ancient stones and tropical flowers. "Dance with me?" Jericho requested, pulling Abena close as music drifted from the courtyard. She melted against him as they swayed together, her head resting on his chest where she could hear his heart beating in time with hers. "I love you," she murmured. "Arrangement or not, I'd choose you every time." His response was to kiss her deeply, his hands sliding down her back to pull her closer. The kiss quickly became heated as passion flared between them, intense as ever, despite their months together. They managed to find their way to a private terrace, their desire building with each step. As soon as they were alone, Jericho pressed Abena against a moonlit pillar, his kiss hungry and demanding. Her dress proved easy to move aside, revealing delicate lingerie that made his breath catch. No matter how many times they made love, the sight of her never failed to amaze him. His heart thundered so loudly he was sure she must hear it. "Beautiful," he breathed, the word inadequate for what he felt. Every curve, every inch of her was perfect, made more so by the love shining in her eyes. Their lovemaking was intense, yet tender, each touch charged with the joy of their revelation and the anticipation of tomorrow's wedding. The ancient villa walls absorbed their gasps and moans as they lost themselves in each other completely. Later, after making themselves presentable again, they rejoined the party hand in hand. Their families pretended not to notice their absence, though knowing smiles were exchanged all around. As the evening drew to a close, Madame Efua approached them privately. "Marina would be proud," she said softly, "not of the arrangement, of how you transformed it into something real and powerful." "Do you think she knew?" Abena asked. "That we'd figure it out?" "That woman didn't leave anything to chance," her grandmother smiled. "I wouldn't be surprised if this revelation was part of her plan too." They shared one final toast under the Miami stars, this time to Marina's vision and the love that had grown beyond it. Their families gathered close, all pretense of manipulation set aside in favor of genuine celebration. Tomorrow they would be married, joining their lives officially before their families and friends. But tonight had been about acknowledging the complex path that had led them to each other, and the power of love to transcend even the most carefully laid plans. As they drove home to their penthouse, both felt lighter for having shared their secret. Their family's schemes had brought them together, but their love had grown wild and free, exceeding everyone's expectations. The Miami night wrapped around them like silk as they prepared for their final night apart before the wedding. Tomorrow would begin a new chapter in their extraordinary love story, one written entirely on their own terms. Their journey had started with an arranged merger and an unforgettable night of passion, but it had blossomed into something far more powerful than anyone could have planned. For in their union lay not just the fulfillment of Marina's vision, but something even more extraordinary, a love that had found its own way, growing wild and free within the carefully tended garden of family expectations. Chapter 12. A Miami Fairy Tale. The historic Biltmore Hotel gleamed like a Spanish palace in the early morning light as Miami's most anticipated wedding of the year began to unfold. In the presidential suite, Abena stood before a full-length mirror, Marina's innovative dress flowing around her like liquid starlight. The technical elements woven into the fabric responded to her movements, creating subtle patterns of light that made her appear to glow from within. Her grandmother had arranged her curls in an elegant style, incorporating both modern and traditional elements, just like everything else about their union. "Perfect," Madame Afua declared, adjusting the cathedral-length veil. "Marina would be so proud to see her vision realized." Abena touched the antique ring that had started their journey, now paired with Jericho's modern addition. "Do you think she really knew how this would all turn out?" "That woman could see possibilities others missed," her grandmother replied, eyes twinkling, "much like someone else I know." A knock at the door announced the arrival of both mothers, each carrying something borrowed and blue. Their previous competition had transformed into cooperation, both families now truly united by their children's genuine love. Meanwhile, in another wing of the hotel, Jericho adjusted his custom tuxedo, designed to complement the technical elements of Abena's dress. Subtle LED threads matched his heartbeat to hers when they stood close, another innovation they'd developed together. "Nervous?" his father asked, helping with his cufflinks. "Not about marrying Abena," Jericho replied with absolute certainty, "though I am wondering if our families have any other long-term schemes we should know about." Their laughter was interrupted by the arrival of Uncle Antonio, surprisingly sober for once. "The quantum computing interface is ready for your vows," he reported, "though I still think traditional paper would work just fine." "Nothing traditional about our love story," Jericho reminded him. "Why start now?" The ceremony space took everyone's breath away. The Biltmore's grand ballroom had been transformed into a perfect fusion of past and future. Historic architecture provided the framework for cutting-edge holographic displays showing neural pathway patterns in soft blues and golds. Traditional flowers mixed with technically enhanced blooms that changed color in response to nearby movement. As the guests settled into their seats, anticipation built. This wasn't just the social event of the season, it was the culmination of a love story that had captured Miami's imagination. The arranged marriage that had blossomed into something far more powerful than anyone had planned. The music began, a piece they had composed together, combining traditional wedding themes with mathematical patterns from their quantum AI research. Abena appeared at the doors and Jericho's heart nearly stopped. She was beyond beautiful. The innovative dress made her appear to float as she moved, trails of light following her progress down the aisle. But it was her eyes, filled with love and joy, that truly took his breath away. Their vows were as unique as their relationship. Using their neural interface technology, they shared not just words, but actual emotions with each other and their guests. The entire room gasped as they felt the depth of love between them, the perfect synchronization of their hearts and minds. "I choose you," Jericho said, his voice carrying clearly through the ballroom. "Not because of arrangements or family plans, but because my soul recognizes its other half in you. You challenge me intellectually, inspire me professionally, and make my heart race with just a smile. I promise to love you through every innovation, every discovery, every moment of our lives together." Tears sparkled in Abena's eyes as she responded. "I choose you, beyond all arrangements and expectations. You see me completely, scientist and woman, traditional and modern, all that I am and all that I can be. I promise to love you through every neural pathway, every quantum computation, every heartbeat of our shared future." Their kiss was sweet, yet passionate, sealing their vows as their families and friends cheered. The technical elements in their clothing synchronized, creating a spectacular light show that represented their unified heartbeats. The reception that followed was a celebration that would be talked about for years. Traditional dances mixed with innovative entertainment, including demonstrations of their latest neural interface technology. Their first dance featured holographic displays responding to their movements, creating patterns of light that matched their rhythm. As evening approached, they slipped away from the party to share a private moment in the hotel's rooftop garden. The Miami sunset painted the sky in brilliant colors as Jericho pulled Abena close. "Happy, Mrs. Basilio?" he murmured against her lips. "Dr. Hadley Basilio," she corrected with a smile. "And yes, more than I ever thought possible." Their kiss deepened quickly, months of passion flaring between them. Abena's hand slid inside his jacket as his fingers tangled in her curls, both forgetting they were expected back at the reception. "We should wait," she gasped, as his lips found that sensitive spot behind her ear. "Our families can handle themselves for a while," he growled softly, his hands already working on the innovative clasps of her dress. "I've been dying to help you out of this masterpiece all day." The dress came away easily, designed for both entrance and exit. Beneath it, Abena wore delicate lingerie that made Jericho's breath catch. His heart thundered so loudly he was sure she must hear it as he took in the sight of her in the sunset light. "Beautiful," he breathed, the word inadequate for what he felt. Every curve, every inch of her was perfect, made more so by the love shining in her eyes. Their wedding night lovemaking was intense yet tender, each touch charged with the joy of their official union and the promise of their future together. The Miami moon rose over their private paradise as they lost themselves in each other completely. Later, much later, they rejoined their reception to knowing smiles and gentle teasing. The party continued well into the night, a perfect celebration of their unique love story. As midnight approached, they bid farewell to their guests and boarded Jericho's private yacht. Their honeymoon would begin with a cruise along the coast before flying to Ghana, combining business with pleasure as they expanded their neural interface technology globally. On the deck of the yacht, wrapped in each other's arms, they watched the Miami skyline recede. The city had witnessed their entire love story, from that first night at the club to their elaborate wedding day. "What are you thinking?" Jericho asked, pressing soft kisses along Abena's shoulder. "About how perfectly everything worked out," she replied, turning in his embrace. "How all the arrangements and schemes led to something real and wonderful." "We would have found each other anyway," he murmured against her lips. "Some connections are just meant to be." Their kiss deepened as passion built between them again. This time their lovemaking was slow and sweet, celebrating their first night as husband and wife beneath the stars. As dawn approached, they lay tangled together, watching the sunrise paint the ocean in brilliant colors. Their bodies fit together perfectly, hearts beating in synchronization, just like their innovative wedding clothes had displayed. "Ready for our next adventure?" Jericho asked, his fingers tracing patterns on her skin. "With you?" "Always." Abena kissed him softly. "Though I'm still convinced our families are plotting something else." "Probably grandchildren," he chuckled, pulling her closer. "But let's make them wait for that. I want you all to myself for a while." Their laughter mixed with the sound of waves as the yacht carried them toward their future. Their love story had begun with an arranged merger and an unforgettable night of passion, but it had grown into something far more powerful than anyone could have planned. For in their union lay not just personal happiness, but the potential to change the world itself. Their shared vision of neural interfaces and quantum AI would soon reshape human connection and consciousness. But first, they would celebrate their own connection, writing new chapters in their ongoing love story. Their families had planted a seed, but what had grown was beyond anyone's planning. It was a love story for the ages, written in the language of neural pathways and quantum computations, of passionate kisses and tender embraces, of shared dreams and infinite possibilities. The Miami morning wrapped around them like a warm embrace as they began their honeymoon journey. Together, they would explore new worlds, develop new technologies, and deepen their extraordinary connection. Their love had already transformed their lives in magical ways, but the best was yet to come. For Jericho and Abena Hadley Basilio had created something unprecedented, not just in their technological innovations, but in the depth of their connection. Their love transcended arrangements and expectations, blooming wild and free into something more powerful than any algorithm could compute. As the sun rose on their first day as husband and wife, they held each other close, hearts beating in perfect synchronization. Their journey had only just begun, but already they knew one thing with absolute certainty. Together, they could achieve anything they dreamed.